Welcome back to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and this is another edition of our Superintendent Series. This one, I think, is a pretty special one. Steven Biehl, the superintendent at Wolf River Golf Course in northern Michigan. It's in Bear Lake, Michigan. This is an incredible story. I've known Steven for a number of years. We actually played golf before he made the move from Chicago up to northern Michigan. He's a great guy, and I think he undertook and executed maybe the most remarkable project of the last couple of years. He did more with less than any superintendent that I know of, and this is an incredible story. It is a superintendent that has gone above and beyond and really transformative property and is delivering an exceptional product at a very, budget friendly and low cost. I think, we give a lot of praise to the great golf courses in the world, the elite courses, the places that have millions of dollars for maintenance budgets. But to me, the most remarkable, the most inspiring places are the places that do a lot for a little bit of dollars. And Wolf River is that. Steven did an amazing renovation with a small staff and a very small budget. And it is an exceptional place to play golf. And it's very cheap and very, very friendly to all types of golfers. So he's doing an incredible job, and excited for everybody to hear this episode of the Superintendent Series. The Superintendent Series is brought to you by Toro, the only brand with a full line of equipment and irrigation products to keep your golf course in top condition. Toro is serious about R&D, and they're always out there listening to superintendents so they can develop products that help you solve your biggest challenges. And when it comes to local service and support, their distributor network is second to none. See how Toro is always solving and always evolving at Toro.com. All right, let's get to Steven Biehl. Steven, I got to ask, would you include golf architect now on your resume?
I suppose a few people would probably say I should. I haven't had to update the resume, so I haven't felt the need to do that. But I suppose with the scope of work that was done, I could make that argument.
I don't think a lot of people have the context of what you did. But you are the superintendent at Wolf River Golf Park, which is in northern Michigan. It was formerly Bear Lake Highlands Golf Course. And you guys underwent what I think a lot of people dream of, is the idea of taking a golf course that a lot of people play, that's, it is what the golf course is, and reimagining it. You conducted a renovation that looked at the tees, the green, redid the tees, the greens, the grass. You installed new grass and redid all the bunkers. And I think where most people kind of lose that dream of doing that is when you start to look at the cost. I think what you've done is that you've kind of done it at a remarkable cost. What was the budget that you guys completed this project, 18-hole real renovation, and how did you guys do it at such a cheap price?
Well, if you want to highlight just the project costs, including some capital equipment, we bought a seeder. It was probably around the $150,000 mark. The reason we were able to do that is because it was on a great piece of property to begin with. We had fantastic soils. They drained well. And that allowed us to just go in and put a bunker where we wanted. It allowed us to recontour the greens how we needed. And we could achieve an end result that was very playable because the soils were fantastic. It was a great site, a lot of great natural drainage that allowed for just little one-off pieces of work. We didn't have to move a lot of soil to put in a bunker. We could just nestle a bunker into a hill. We could just recontour greens and match up with what existed outside the green surface. And so the costs were time more than money. It just required a little bit of time to establish grass, move the soil, etc.
$150,000. That is a number that I think people will say there's no possible way you did this. There's no way you did this for $150,000.
And that's fine. That there are, when people lump in project costs, they also lump in sometimes the big clubs, they'll lump in an operating loss from the clubhouse. They'll lump in all-in costs. And if we're going to put in the costs all the way down to property taxes, that's a little bit more. But there's this cost of ownership of owning a golf course that every facility has. And we were closed for a year to do it. So again, that's time. That's not necessarily money that somebody needed to complete it. So I say a lot that you can do anything you want to a golf course. You just need time or money. And if you're short on one, you need more of the other. You can accomplish a lot through, a little bit of money as long as you got the timeline to complete it.
How do you, I guess, so you're up in northern Michigan. How do you look at golf courses before? I'm not sure if you thought you could do the whole project for $150,000, but how do you look at golf courses differently before and after this project? Just general golf courses?
I've always felt like I looked at golf courses differently. Every place I go to, I'm always looking at things that I would do differently. Being able to actually execute the changes on a property that was fantastic to begin with, you learn a lot, and when you're doing it, but it also convinced me that it can be done.
So you went about this project. You guys did all of the work in totality in-house. You would be the golf architect. You were leading the charge. How did it come to be that you were the golf architect on this project?
When we were going through the planning process, we had decided that, okay, we were going to do a project. What was the scope of the project is what we were looking at. We talked about hiring an architect, perhaps a couple people to come in and help, and weighing the benefits of that, weighing different opportunities beside that, and one of the decision makers just looked at me and said, "Can you build a bunker?" And I said, "Yeah, I've built a bunker before." And he just goes, "Okay, you do it," and that was that. That's how it came to be. I think that speaks a lot of the trust they had in me, that or maybe the ignorance of what I was wanting to do, but I felt like I was pretty detailed in what the possibilities were on the property and what the possibilities were for a project. And based on what they wanted out of it, they wanted it to remain a community golf course. They didn't want it to be, they knew it wasn't going to be any type of destination resort. They knew that they wanted it to remain part of the community. They wanted it to be available to the locals. So, some of those aspects of what an architect provides, we weren't going to get our return. An architect can certainly provide a lot of expertise in that. They can, provide some speed as far as how quickly those changes get done. There's some marketing that you can put behind that. And when you add all that up and the decision was made that we just wanted to keep it a place that locals can play, and we wanted to keep it affordable, that kind of made the decision for us. I knew that we could make it a lot better. I knew that we could make it interesting. And, I think we've done that. And part of the, part of my plan forward is, okay, don't overdo it. This is just going to be me shaping some bunkers and greens. We're not going to go crazy here, trying to do some wholesale changes when I don't have the expertise to fit all that together. Not being an actual golf course architect that has done this before. I think the way to go is keep it simple. Just do one bunker at a time. Just do one green at a time, and don't get out over my skis, even though it probably already was to begin with.
I want to go back to when they said, you do it. Do you know how to build a bunker? Yes, you do it. How did you feel? Like you were, so to give people context, you got a double degree at Purdue. You got an agronomy, like your turf degree, but you also got a landscape architecture degree.
I started in both. So I started as a double major in landscape architecture and turfgrass science to be a golf course architect.
Mm-hmm.
That was my intent when I graduated high school. I wanted to be a golf course architect, and so that was the plan. And after a couple years, you have the tech bubble burst, and any type of golf construction just ceased. I just kind of made the decision that I was going to go just into turf, and I then just focused on turf. And so I do have a 4-year agronomy degree in turfgrass science from Purdue. And sorry about that.
That's okay. It's okay.
And so, I've always looked at golf courses with an architecture eye. I've always, studied golf course architecture on my own. And so when they say, okay, you do it, I'm like, oh, okay. And it was a couple of days later, I'm like, well, wait a second. I guess this is going to happen. And so I just started taking tons of notes. And I'd been on the property for 3 years up to that point. So I had a good knowledge of the property and have spent 3 years driving around it thinking of ideas. So now it's just a point of trying to figure out which ones to implement and which ones were going to be best to implement.
Let's talk a little bit about the creative process. We talked, you talked about how you kind of approached it as one bunker, one green at a time. When you look at, like, where did you start? And, you get on your start, like, you've never built a green before. When you look back, like, what was it like building 18 new greens and shaping them? And what did you learn along the way? What were the early greens? And do you look at them ever and be like, I wish I would have done this? Or do you look back and think like, this, like, walk us through just like shaping 18 greens when you've never done it before, and how it went and the thoughts that were in your head while you're doing them.
I had quite a few notes laid out that when I went to each green, I had already mapped out an idea of what I was going to try to do with that specific green. We had a handful of greens that had surface drainage issues. So that's the number one priority. How are we going to shape it to improve the surface drainage? I had ideas mapped out of how the surface drainage was going to come off the green. So I had already ideas where I was going to try to put shapes to get the surface drainage off the green. And so each time I went to a green and started, and we stripped off the old layer. We stripped off a thin layer of the old greens, and then we tilled them up. So when I got there, it was just a tilled up patch of dirt. And so I already in my head, I had an idea of what I wanted to do with the green. So then it's just a matter of going out and starting to move the dirt around. I started with a tractor with a loader and moved the dirt around with the loader, and then went and started to do finish grading with a Sand Pro, and then just drug it smooth and looked at it for a day and said, okay, let's go seed it. Yeah, the first few greens I did were fine. It was the first green was one of the first ones I did, and I could never get what was in my head into the dirt, and so I ended up just saying I've got to get something. I got to get something going so I can get some seed on this. I can't just spend 2 weeks on this green. So I just at that point it's like, okay, that's good enough. I'll tie it in and float it out and seed it. There's certainly a couple greens I wish I could have another crack at, because once you do several of them, you learn a lot real fast, and so there's a couple that I wish I could have a redo of, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with how they turned out, and so it's before I started, I had an idea, I had notes, and I would go around the green and I would place flags at the low point, place flags at the high point on the edges, and then just try to match up the dirt with that.
What I'm shocked that the first one was your first one, the first green.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. No.
Which green was your first one?
So the 9th green was the first one I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was the? I mean, where would you say you just like started? You feel like, what green number were you like, I really feel great about this? And what green are you most proud of?
I think the 11th green turned out pretty well for what it was before and what I was trying to do with it. It's benched into a side of a hill and just really difficult to get the contours right. There was a third of the green that was on a flat area, and the rest of it just sloped off so hard to the left that you couldn't put a pin in it. And so the goal there was to, put a shelf in it so that I could get a level spot on the other side to add some hole locations there, but also try to match up this shelf in the middle of the green to a valley that went off the front of the green. So there's a little low spot in the fairway. And so it was an effort to try to match up this little low spot that's in the fairway, make it look like this was a valley that ran into the green. And that was going to be the little valley that separated the two shelves. And I think it worked out. There's a few pin placements on the left side that work, and it drains well, and all the contours mesh in pretty well. So I think the 11th green was pretty ambitious for what I wanted to do, but I think it turned out pretty well.
It's a memorable green. I mean, it's amazing. It kind of sits on the side of a ridge. It's got that valley in the middle of it. It kind of kicks in from the right. Everything left, that if you miss left, it's going to tumble down a hill. I was way down there, like 20 yards down, 20 yards to the left and 20 feet below the green. It is a really huge scale green, and I think it did turn out well. What was the toughest part of the project that you didn't really expect going into it?
Oh, just timelines. I was completely ignorant of how long it was going to take to do some stuff. But vine fescue comes up really fast and then it just sits there, and it doesn't look like it's doing anything for a long time. So I'm sitting there, just waiting for grass to grow in, essentially. And I wasn't, familiar enough with seeding on that type of scale to have the patience to just wait it out. So that was a big one. The biggest unexpected thing was probably our pond project. There was a pond that was bulkheaded with railroad ties all the way around it. And that was in the scope of the project. We were going to remove the railroad ties, rebuild the pond edge. And we had the permitting for that. And it got to a point in the year where the plan to have a contractor come do that never came to fruition. And so I'm sitting here with a permit that's going to be expiring in a couple months and a pond project that's not done. And I pretty much just said, okay, if we're going to do this project, then it's got to be now or it's never going to get done. So we pulled the trigger to remove all these railroad ties, 400 railroad ties or something, the bulkhead at this pond, and then rebuild the pond edge. And yeah, so me and the staff of 5 that were doing it, I had another person on staff, but they were mowing the whole time. Just started doing this project, and it just.
How do you even go about rebuilding a pond? Like, what did you know what you were doing? Did you Google how to rebuild a pond? Like, how do you do that?
Well, it was just a matter of rebuilding the pond edge and, reshaping the pond edge with some soil and then reestablishing it. So it wasn't drastic work. But it was a lot of work.
400 railroad ties sounds awful.
A lot of time out of, some other project where we could have been doing on the golf course. But I'm so glad we did it. The result is so much better. It's, there's 2 holes. Well, each hole on either side of the pond plays a lot different now that project is done. So, the timeline on getting that grass established is extended. I mean, I think, I don't know if you made it down there by that pond, but you can still see the grass is still pretty thin, but it's certainly quite a bit better than it was last year. So little by little, it keeps getting a little bit better. So
what was the most fun part of the project for you?
Shaping bunkers. Yeah, I learned, there's a reason golf course architects get into this business because, shaping bunkers is a ton of fun, and it's fun to get in there and just start digging and trying to, take what's in your head and put it on the ground. So definitely shaping bunkers was my favorite part of it.
What were you trying to do with the bunkers? Like when you're in there shaping what are you thinking about like while you're shaping, say, 25, 30 bunkers? What are the thoughts that are going through your head about them?
Number one was getting them constructed in a way that the surrounding water does not drain into the bunker. And that was number one priority over the aesthetic. Part of the goals of the project were to create a golf course that was efficient to maintain over the long term. And anytime you got to go out and fix washouts is just a terrible drain on labor. And it just wears the age of a bunker down really fast if it's full of water all the time. And if you can shape it in a way the water doesn't run in there, most of the time you're not going to get water standing in. And water standing in a bunker is the result of water coming in from outside the bunker. So that was the number one goal, is to shape it so that water ran away from the bunker, it ran around the bunker. And you you can get some interesting shapes when that's a goal also. And that's also what I wanted to do, was to make bunkers that people didn't typically see. Our clientele is, the local community golfer, and there's some bunker shapes out there that they just don't see at any other places. And that was a goal of the project also, was to create interesting shapes and give the bunker aesthetic, make that a unique characteristic of the golf course.
Yeah, I mean, they have a feel. It doesn't feel like your run of the mill local municipal golf course. It makes you feel like you're playing at kind of like a new design that was designed by somebody, of note, with the way they kind of sit into the land and are placed in strategic places. When you kind of zoom out, is there a hole that you feel like was really transformed the most from something you thought was, it was fine, but maybe you even didn't see what it could be based off of the work that you guys did?
Yeah, there's a couple holes that come to mind. I think 16 is a lot different and a lot better. And all we did was remove a bunch of trees and redo the one bunker that was on the hole to begin with. It sits on some good land, and there was just a huge number of trees that just choked out the playing lines. It played along a line of trees on the left side of the hole, and we removed 30 feet of that tree line. So the tree line got pushed back 30 feet, and that opened up a lot of views and also opened up some playing lines into the green, if somebody wanted to go for it in two. So I think that hole plays a lot different now. And it opens up a lot of, it's just more open and opens up more views. And I think that hole has transformed quite a bit. And I think the third hole is a lot different. The third hole used to be just straight out. There was no bunker in it. The green was just kind of a raised up perch that was flat. I don't know if you remember that image of the eighth green at Augusta National that goes around. It was kind of like that. It was kind of this perched up level table that didn't have any contour in it. And water would run off the front, and the front was always wet as a result of that. So it was just kind of straight out hole with no interest. It does run between two ponds, so that constrains a lot of what you're able to do there, because it's not very wide on either side before you go into the water. But added a small bunker in the fairway to add some interest in decision making off the tee, and just added a bunch of contour to the green, get some water to run off in a different spot, and add some putting interest. It plays a lot different, and you can get a lot of different shots depending on how you play it each day.
You spoke about the clientele being like your local Northern Michigan golf course, where you get a lot of people from playing around town, maybe a little bit of tourist traffic from people that are visiting the lakes around. How have the regular clientele received the work? How was it when it initially opened? Because it's a drastically different golf course. And how is it today, a year plus in?
I think there was some shock when they returned after we were open. I don't think they didn't have a good idea of what we were going to do. We essentially told them, we're going to be closed, and we're going to regrass and redo the bunkers and greens, and it's kind of the communication we left it with. And so they didn't know what to expect, and I don't think that clientele doesn't, they're not exposed to that. The private club industry oh, they're closing to do a renovation. At this point, it's okay. Yeah, we'll check it out when it's done. It's not new to the private club industry, but um, doing this type of work on a golf course that is targeted to the local community is fairly unusual. So I don't think they knew what to expect, and I think they were in shock when they came back. There was some grumbling. There was some people, didn't like what we were doing. They didn't like what they saw out there. But there was a lot of positive comments though too. And as time has gone on, the positive comments have continued. And some of those people that grumbled about it early last year, this year they're like, wow, they kind of, as they've gotten used to it, as they've played it a lot, I think they understand what our goal was, and some of those people have come up and given me positive comments now, say they really enjoy the golf course. So I think it was shock for a lot of the locals, but yeah, by and large, it's been very positive since then, and yeah, just a lot of good comments from them.
I think I'm still shocked at the dollar amount, $150,000. Was that the original plan, to be in that kind of range? I assume that you kind of sold it in that you could do this for an affordable price, like not that much money. Was it always the plan to do it that cheap? And what, how do you think what do you think local courses in similar positions to your course, maybe they don't have the natural advantages that you have of sandy soil and good kind of starting place, like great natural elements that you can work in, but how should other local courses look at doing projects on a less expensive end?
So it was not originally planned to be as cheap as it ended up being. We had outlined, a variety of other plans for it that just didn't materialize. And, we came to, the middle of the season, and when those didn't materialize, it's like, okay, I guess we got to finish this project with what we got.
I mean, at that point, you got like a half renovated golf course, right?
Yeah. What can you do but just keep going and keep growing the grass? So, and we had purchased the seed and fertilizer before the inflation really struck the golf industry. Seed costs, fine fescue seed tripled in price in the 9 months after we bought our seed to do the project. So, yeah, if you're going out to buy that same quantity of seed now, you'd pay 3 times as much as what we did. So we bought some of our starting materials at a perfect time. We had no irrigation costs because all the irrigation had stayed in the same spot. So we didn't have any irrigation changes. That is a massive savings. We just bought a local sand. So, 20 tons of sand is going to cost us $600. And is there a few stones in it? Yep, there is. But our marketing is that the bunkers are hazards, and we want to maintain them as hazards. And that's how we do it. The sand is actually pretty white, so it offsets the green color pretty well in that. But so, we had set out to do it efficiently. We knew that we were going to do it in-house with our own labor, with some rental equipment. As the project went on, things just never materialized as they were originally laid out. And we did the project all in-house with 6 people. And again, it's possible if you have the time to do that. As far as, other golf courses trying to mimic it, it's what we did wasn't hard. We didn't do anything that was um, impossible to do. I shaped all the greens and bunkers with a tractor with a loader and a Sand Pro with a blade on the front of it. Almost every golf course has got those two pieces of equipment. So that's possible. And again, it was sandy soil, easy to work in. I didn't need to put drains in any of the bunkers. So obviously that was a big help. We did all our tree work ourselves, cut the trees down ourselves, rented a stump grinder, ground the stumps out ourselves. So, that type of stuff any golf course can do. Now, we did have a lot of tree removal done before we actually started doing any seeding, which that's going to be needed. If you want a good growing environment to grow the new seed, then you're going to need to get the trees out. So some of the tree work was already done prior to that. But yeah, as far as other local golf courses trying to do the same thing, it's not hard to do. Can you go out and pick off one or two holes a year and do something like this? I don't see why you couldn't. If you're going to start to do, a renovation that you want 60 bunkers, well, now that's a different scope. Now you're bringing in an architect. Now you're bringing in a contractor to do that work for you. We have 17 bunkers. It's less than 9,000 square feet of bunker area is what exists out there right now. So having small bunkers is a big help in doing that also. And just don't try to do too much. You can add a whole lot of interest in a golf course without having to do too much. Widen the playing corridors, take advantage of some slopes, and you can provide a lot of interesting shots without a lot of work.
To me, a hole that would scream that at Wolf River is the 8th, where it seems like you just took down some trees, exposed this great slope on the terrain, and then reshape the green that sits on this nice ridge. And it was like, I think that was the thing I was kind of shocked about is how well the original routing was done, that you had like some holes that with a little bit more pizzazz to it, with a little more short grass and some reshaped bunkers and greens. Like, it's like, wow, this is a really great hole. But that the 8th hole stood out to me as like, it seems like you just got rid of trees, expanded to the short grass, and you had, a hole that has like world-class scale and interest. You're trying to hug it up the right side, and if you don't hit it right up the right side, you're going to bound further away from the target. It just seemed like a classic golf hole.
Yeah, that's all we did. There were 14 trees on that hole that we removed, and just saying that is incredible. 14 trees that were lining the left and right side of the tree. There's a narrow chute up that fairway. Remove the trees, expand it out. And there was a bunker on the front right of that green beforehand. And I added that bunker in the back of the green. Just kind of dug into the slope that was behind the green. You didn't have to do anything. That's one of those areas where, don't do too much. You're just going to start messing stuff up. Just let the hole sit in the land and be done with it.
I know that you finished the big aspects of the project, but as we played and won around, you talked a lot about like other things you want to do. Having done so much work for such a low dollar amount, what are the things that you want to add to the golf course as you continue? Like, I imagine your mind probably wanders and thinks about the more stuff that you can do to continue to improve the golf course at a low dollar amount. What are some things that you're looking at over the next, couple years as to what you want to add to the course?
We still have some forward tees to build, and there's some other tees that I'd still like to level out more. So it's just a matter of, rolling the sod back, leveling the soil, and then rolling the sod back on. We have one more bunker to rebuild on the 12th green, so that bunker was never rebuilt on the 12th. So we have one more bunker to rebuild. And other projects, more than anything else, is kind of cleaning up the brush outside the holes and just continue, just continue nursing grass on, overseeding thin areas. When you reseed a golf course, it's not a 1-year project. It's a 3-year project too, that requires, revisiting thin areas for a few years to get some more seed in the ground. Still some more trees. We got some willows that just are a pain to deal with. So some willows that I want to take out, expand some fairway area where these willows are. And those are still, like, when I look on my notes, like those items are in my notes for the project. It's just when the plan didn't stay on the rails.
When you're rebuilding a lake instead of working on the golf course.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose, and the focus was, okay, we got to get right down the middle done first, and then we'll start working our way out. So those are still little projects that we're going to keep going on, and we've got seed and we've got the seeder, and I like seeding a lot better than sod. It's cheaper and establishes better over the long term. So, that's the plan. Just keep picking off these little things as time goes on. We're redoing some mowing lines. I know, Andy, you and Cameron both put your ball in the tall grass behind 3 green, but I don't know if the lines were painted, but we're expanding that mow line back. So there's going to be more mowed grass behind 3. So just little things like that, hopefully make it more fun to play.
What's been the most satisfying moment since you finished the project? What's been the time that you just, couldn't help but smile on the inside the most?
Yeah. Driving around in the morning and seeing the finished product is a lot of fun. Now, you got the sun coming up. You can see it a lot more now off the hills. Now that the trees are thinned out, you can actually see the slopes. It's really satisfying. And then, hearing other people come off the golf course that have played it for a long time, or played it, when they were a kid, and they come back and are just gushing over the changes. That's happened a few times now. And it's really satisfying that, somebody that was very familiar with the golf course before we did the project really likes the changes afterwards. And they have a similar excitement about it now that I did when I was out there building a bunker. So I think that's the most satisfying thing, is when other people get to be excited about stuff that I was excited about doing.
Did you have like an inspiration for the greens, what you were trying to do? Was there set or certain types of greens that you had in your mind?
When I started planning it out, I was trying to do that. I was trying to say, okay, what greens do I like? Can I mimic those greens in a way? And I learned pretty quick that was going to be me falling flat on my face trying to do that. And I think the easier route was going to be, look, just get the surface drainage off and tie in the contours with those outside the green as best you can. And, the internal contours will kind of take care of themselves, and you'll get some interesting putting. So So yeah, I thought about it quite a bit, but once I got to it, it's like, no, I don't think that's gonna work out for me. And it's it was easier, and I think turned out better when I just take my cues from what's on the ground there to begin with, and it gets a better result. It looks better. It looks more finished when when I just kind of tie into the little contours around the green or tie in bunkers to the slopes rather than trying to, make something that I saw somewhere else. I will say the bunkers, you know, what I would have loved to do with the bunkers is make them look like, the Heathland courses in England, like the Berkshire, Liphook, or Sunningdale. Like I love the look of those bunkers. A lot of that has to do with the heather that's around them, but some of the shapes that I saw in some pictures from those courses, like maybe I can attempt to mimic those shapes in the bunkers that I make.
So I think like your path to Wolf River's interesting. You were in Chicago working at like big name club. You had worked at big name clubs. You had since had offers to work at big name clubs. Like what drew you to working at this small casino resort course in northern Michigan? What got you up there?
Well, I had lived in Bear Lake when I was at Purdue. I did an internship at Arcadia Bluffs, and after spending a summer at Arcadia Bluffs, I'm like, man, this northern Michigan is pretty awesome. So that was my first time visiting northern Michigan, and uh, first time spending a summer in northern Michigan. So I fell in love with northern Michigan then, and then stayed in Michigan to do 3 more internships before I graduated Purdue. I did Wesco One Players Club down in Holland, and then I did an internship at Crystal Downs also, and decided, okay, I want to find something in northern Michigan. Um, as luck would have it, when I graduated Purdue, Arcadia had an internship available, so worked for 4 years at Acadia, and then went down to Chicago. So um, I was, very familiar with northern Michigan, and I love northern Michigan, and just wanted to find a way back. And I knew of Bear Lake Islands. I had played it, when I was living in Bear Lake and interning at Arcadia Bluffs over 20 years ago. And I remember thinking then, I was like, oh, this place is kind of cool, but I hadn't been back in a lot of years. And I saw the job posted and did a little research and found out, oh, that this job was for Bear Lake Highlands. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I applied, and then when I came up for an interview, I toured the course, and I was like, wow, like I was like blown away. The course was terrible shape because it had been bank owned, so there had just been no investment in it for many, many years. But man, the bones were really nice, like the contours and even the layout was good. And I'm like, man, this could be really cool. So um, I kind of just talked with them about what their goals were for the property, and they're like, well, we don't know. This has kind of happened really fast for us. We don't know what our goals are for the property. And they said, that's why we're hiring you. So it sounded like a good opportunity. And I just took a shot at it. And it's been amazing. I never had any idea that it would, just kind of snowball into what it's been. But man, took a left turn, and it's been awesome.
I mean, it sounds like a job that provided you a lot of autonomy. And
Oh, for sure.
I think one of the things that probably is the toughest aspect of the superintendent life is the lack of autonomy, the committees, the idea of like all the layers of people that you have to work with and in a sense for in the at the high end club model versus the autonomy that a smaller shop and relatively hands off ownership can provide.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, and it was that way from the beginning. And I've been in those situations, and you're kind of an administrator of the strategic direction of the golf course. And at those big clubs, there's typically an architect that is on staff to make those directions for you, and then there's a green committee you have to answer to. Sometimes there's another capital planning committee, and when you have all these different layers, any type of decision making, for better or worse, gets watered down. I think the best products of whether it's a renovation at a high end private club or like the work that we did, the vision of one person or the vision of two people is what gets realized, is what the best product is. And in my situation, I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, they put a lot of trust in me, and they put a lot of trust in me leading the crew. And yeah, without a lot of reason to trust me, I don't know that I gave them a ton of reason to trust me, but
you knew how to build a bunker. You knew how to build a bunker.
Exactly. They knew they wanted it improved, and I came to them with ideas, and they got excited when I was presenting the plan for if we were to close, what could we do? They kind of perked up, like, oh, they never thought about, you can rebuild a bunker and you can plant new grass on a green. But yeah, if you close, you can do those kind of things. And so they got excited, and yeah, it just happened.
When you think out now, I mean, yeah, I imagine that for you, with your interest in golf architecture, you're at some point a large portion of your life you wanted to be a golf course architect. You've almost, I imagine, opened up a vein per se here. Like, what do you want now? When you think about your career before and after this, like, do you have more ambition to do more projects in your future?
Yeah, I'd love to do more projects. It's not, I still feel like there's some loose ends on this one that I want to finish up, but I don't know where it'll take me. It's not something that I was thinking about when I was doing the project. It's like, okay, well, like I said, okay, we're going to rebuild this bunker. Let's rebuild this bunker. And it was, how can I make this bunker interesting for the hole, and how can I make it fit into the hole? And there was never a larger overarching view of what it would turn into. So, if something happened that, I'd certainly, and there's still projects on the table here that are going to allow me to scratch that itch. We've got all the materials for a putting course. We've got some contouring done already. It's all cleared. And yeah, so it's there. It's just a matter of getting to it and, building it's going to be about a 2-acre putting course, and it's just has some big wild contours. And yeah, so, I still get to play around in the dirt. So
with the one of the things that stood out to me was the conditioning. I thought, you have a single cut of fairway. And then what I found really interesting was the greens, the firmness of the greens. They were extraordinarily firm, but I would just characterize them. You know, a lot of people, there's this fascination with firm and fast. I would say they were more firm and slow. But I found it to be like I haven't seen many of my golf balls react the way that they reacted. Wedges bouncing, 5-6 feet in the air. And really, by the end of the round, I was having to hit shot. Was having to carefully approach hole locations with, thinking, okay, where am I landing this with short irons in my hand? Something that's very rare. And, throw on top of this, it's not like I came in with 2 weeks of drought. There had been some substantial rain in the recent weeks in the area. How are you going about maintaining this golf course and presenting this? And what are the advantages to presenting the greens in the manner that you're presenting?
Yeah, that's one of the goals is keeping slower greens. And our goal is not fast greens. Our goal was the interest in the greens would be from the contours. And some of them are contoured in a way that just won't allow for super fast greens. So, I try to maintain them so that, we can put interesting pins in some of these locations that you just wouldn't be able to if they were super fast. And I think the firmness is, that's how they need to play, because that allows you to utilize the contours that are around the green, whether it's, trying to bounce something in off the right side of number 11 or run something up from the front of the green. I think it's the most fun to play that way. And I think people are starting to learn that. And, a lot of the clientele that we attract, they're not used to that. And it is different. Last year, we were major drought in the spring, and these greens were tabletops. It was extremely difficult to approach these greens last spring. So they were brand new, and it was a drought. They were really hard. And, there were a lot of complaints about that. And so we tried to balance, how we're presenting the golf course with, the communication of, that's how we want you to play. We want you to try to play different shots into the greens. And having greens that are a little bit slower allows you to run balls up onto the greens and get them to hold a little better. And, it's not, if you can get good surface drainage, or, our native soil material drains well enough internally that, I just don't have issues with excess water. It's if, you get the big rain, can you get the water off the greens quick enough to be able to maintain the firmness? And so far we've been able to do that. The fine fescue makes a fantastic surface, and fine fescue seeded into, we didn't move any soil on the fairways, so those are still the soil that was there beforehand. So that added some cushion, and when you plant a new variety of grass that is more drought tolerant, that cushion gets really bouncy when it dries out. So the fine fescue can stay green, but if that cushion on top dries out, it gets really bouncy. So it's just a matter of trying to hang on to that, trying to hang on to those conditions to give that, that playability.
That's it was I thought it was perfect. And obviously I think like the mowing, I imagine maintenance wise you're saving a ton of time using the gang mowers to just have that single cut of grass in the fairways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our fairways, we have about 65 acres of fairways, but we're able to utilize, large area tow behind mowers because there are large areas that we're mowing. So it's much more efficient for us to mow with these large mowers, and we can get a lot of grass cut in a little amount of time. So, it's very efficient to mow the fairways, even though they're large. It's very efficient to mow them.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I'm not sure, if one of the things that you think about is how people decide renovation of the year or these projects, these awards. And it's, I doubt that many Golf Digest or Golf Magazine raters were visiting your place, but I think in terms of sheer accomplishment, what was done at the budget and the constraints of labor and, a fairly aggressive time frame. I can't think of many projects over the last decade that have been as impressive. So, congratulations, Steven. I can't wait till my next visit up there. It's one of my favorite places in the world, Northern Michigan, and definitely found another place that I will frequent when I visit up there. It's to me, kind of like the perfect place to go play golf when you're on vacation in Northern Michigan. Lots of fun and it's affordable, and I think probably pretty welcoming to all golfers of all skill levels and ages. So, congratulations. People can, follow you. You're on X at Wolf River Greens, and then on Instagram it's Steven J. Biehl. And
Steven Biehl.
Steven Biehl. No J.
Yep. No.
In there. So Steven Biehl on Instagram. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, those are probably two good ways to get a hold of you. But big thanks for coming on. It's amazing to see what you did up there.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Appreciate it.
All right. That was a great episode. Great story. Everybody, if you're in Northern Michigan, go visit Wolf River. It's really cool. Big thanks to Steven for coming on, and big thanks to PJ Clark for editing and producing this episode. Thank you, PJ. A quick reminder, if you're interested in more golf course content, more content in general from us, check out Club TFE. It is our membership. It is $120 for the year, and it gets you a boatload of content. There are a couple articles every week. I'm working on one on Clear Creek, a little talked about Core Crenshaw up in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's a course profile. It'll be a deep dive into the design of it. Check that out at thefriedeg.com/membership. Thank you, PJ, and thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week with a couple episodes of the podcast.